haldi, neem, basmati, every medicinal plant. There are now 1,000 patents in America on Indian medicinal plants because all this is published literature, The difference between India and many other cultures is we've been writing for very, very long, And all Ayurvedic knowledge is text. It's all there. All you need to do is copy that text, put it as a patent application. And when the WTO was created, the US changed its systems of, well, first let me go back. The US was a colony, as you'll remember, of England. And England used to have the patents. But America didn't want to respect the British patents. They had patents on salt making, they had patents on shipbuilding, they had patents on spinning and ginning. So America wrote a clause, it's in the Constitution, that any innovation elsewhere will not be counted as an innovation. Only when it's done the first time in America will be counted as an invention, and that's what will get the patent. So they got patents on everything that was already patented. And that way they could get patents now with patents on life, the floodgates open, on all of the Ayurveda. And the way, they used to have seriousness of inspection, patent inspectors. They look at the published literature. Does this already exist? Is this in the public domain? If it's in the public domain, you can't patent. So they changed the reward for the patent inspectors to be how many patents do you give, you'll get promoted accordingly. So then it started a rush for biopiracy. Yeah. So the biopiracy is another element linked to this, because if there hadn't been GMOs, we wouldn't have patents on seeds in life. And for me, the foundational issue of it is what we put in our law. We don't invent living systems. We modify them. We can modify them for the wrong, like the factory farm animals are manipulated in a bad way, a genetically engineered organism. I'll give you the case of Bt cotton. So Bt is a toxin. It doesn't belong to the plant. Now every plant has its own intelligence to deal with pests. And now new research is being done that they release chemicals at the right time. And that chemical signal goes to neighboring plants. So one plant, when it gets bitten, then the other plants protect themselves. When the Bt toxin is added, the poor plant loses its capacity to generate its own pest control mechanisms. That's why in Bt crops you have more attack of new pests, which were never cotton pests before. Every season, armyworm, bollworm, white fly, every season there's a new pest, which was never a cotton pest. So you weaken the organism. And for me, in any living system, you've got to look at the robustness, and resilience of the organism. And that in human beings we call it immunity. The whole COVID experience taught us that those who had immunity did fine. Those who lost their immunity were the ones who were real victims. I started saving seeds of grain. And then the farmers' suicides in the cotton area started to, come in the press at that time. So we'd started the organic movement from Gandhi's ashram in Sevagram. So I said, I'm going to go back to Sevagram and do a pilgrimage. And we did a pilgrimage through the suicide belt, beginning with Vidarbha, Sevagram, then through Andhra into Karnataka. And the pilgrimage was partly to understand why were farmers using GMO cotton when it was so costly for them, they were paying with their very lives. And then that's when I realized, number one, their local seeds had disappeared through something called seed replacement, Like we have a kabadi coming to our house and we give the old things, and then the kabadi gives us a new steel pot or something like that. So people thought that's it is old seeds, and I'll get it from my neighbor, I'll get it from my aunt. I can't run out of seed. But this was happening in every village. So in one season, there was no farmer's seed. I told you about how every Indian company was locked into a licensing arrangement. They could only sell GMO seed. They were forbidden from selling any other. And the third was the public sector, which used to do a lot of breeding, somehow stopped doing its breeding work. I did an RTI to the Cotton Research Institute. You know, how many have you released in the last few years? That too stopped. So there was no option. And that's when I said, okay, we'll save cotton seeds too and distribute. So we got hundreds of farmers who grow organic cotton seed, desi cotton. They obviously are organic. And we are linked to the Khadi ashrams of Wardha, who use that cotton for spinning and weaving. And we have fibers of freedom. You know, you can check with Anu if you want to look at it. So these are lovely scarves. It's all, you know, hand spun, hand woven, vegetable dye, hand printed. So it's the options that have been destroyed. And wherever options are there, farmers are using organic cotton. And the government's own research is showing that the desi cotton economy is much more profitable to the farmer. The Chipko Andolan managed to get the commercial logging banned. That's a big victory. Yeah, that the forests of the mountains, their main purpose is to conserve soil and water. Huh? ये लकड़ी का खदान नहीं है. They're not timber mines, which was the British forestry system. You know, when the British took over the forests, they declared them as sources of timber. And that's why forests were on the one hand, out here there was not so much clear felling as replacement. You know, the forests in the mountains are mixed forests. Pine will be one, but then there'll be oak and rhododendron. So the forests were being replaced by pine. Now pine isn't very suitable for managing the hydrological system. You know, सीधा होता है. जब बारिश आती है, गिरती है, उसका जो pine leaves है वो decompose नहीं होता, तो वो mulch नहीं बनता. So pine forest में you'll never find a spring. All the springs are in the oak forest. So all that knowledge then became part of the policy of government. And I think the fact that we have an environment department first and then an environment ministry was all because of Chipko. Chipko created the environmental consciousness in India. You're asking, you know, so in the narrow thing of forest question, totally successful. I think in the idea of imagination, even more successful. Anywhere people want to defend their trees and forests, they do a Chipko. They call it Chipko. The Chipko originally was a forest issue and the right to the forest. The dam question got attached to it when the Tehri Dam started. Yeah? And Sundarlal Bahuguna and Bimla Bahuguna was there at the dam site. But then that's why you can see the erosion overall as the economy gets globalized and centralized, democracy gets eroded. So if the 70s was the year of people being able to stop commercial interests, by the time the Tehri Dam came, the criminal attitudes in the economy started to come over. JP, total, you know, JP who built the dam, what they did was, I'll tell you a very tragic story. Hundreds of thousands of people had gathered to say no to the dam. And there had been an earthquake in 91. Interestingly, the government said it was in Almora. I went to the Survey of India. They said, no map of Uttarakhand can be given to you. There was no Uttarakhand then. No map of the hills will be given because of the disaster. And the epicenter was around this area of Tehri and, you know. But they were saying Almora, which is very far away. So I wrote to friends in America. I said, get me the site from the Geological Survey of America and send me your maps. And sure enough, the epicenter was at another dam on the Ganges called Maneri Bhali. Because dams are known to put pressure and create dam-induced seismicity, it's called. And this is known all over, you know, that they create. So they triggered a disaster. Now that disaster had happened, people were fighting against Tehri Dam, that this will create even bigger disasters because it's a bigger dam. And one group of villagers who were going back in a bus, you know, the driver spun the bus into the ravine and jumped out. He got saved. Everyone else died. So the brutality with which the protests started to get managed after that, became very, very intense. Everyone was against Tehri Dam. All the spiritual people, in Rishikesh, Hardwar, or the top hydrogeologists and geologists of this country, because it's built on a seismic fault as it is, and then building this huge body of water, and there's so much research done. I think I have probably a large part of the story in my recent movement biography called Terra Viva. This just got published. It's published in the US by Chelsea Green and in India by Women Unlimited. I've got a very detailed story of Tehri Dam. So I think it's very wrong for anyone to say that movement wasn't successful, that started in the 70s, in the 90s, because 90s becomes a different context. Now, if you're dealing with democratic fabric of society through a democratic process, it has another outcome. If you are dealing with what I call economic dictatorship, which is what globalization is, it has a very different outcome. Now, you will say, you said BT cotton is still spreading, but the BT cotton lie has got exposed. The lack of alternatives. The Indian companies are still locked in, they're not allowed. Even though Monsanto could not destroy the law, they've threatened these companies. I know because they talk to me. And of course, a small organization like Navdanya, can have one coordinator, we have 200 farmers, you can multiply this much seed each season. But as a principle, it is established that ecological, organic cotton is a much better option for the farmers. So, in the area of movements and the area of sustainability, it's very much the Gita teaching. The issue is not success of the outcome. The issue is doing the right thing. And whether it's successful for that period or not, it will always be relevant for the earth, it will always be relevant for society. And if the forces of the day will push it to the margins, it doesn't mean its truth gets marginalized. That never happens.